Hello and welcome to Talking Points here on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keith Shaw, wishing you a very good morning, and here's a beautiful day ahead. It's already started off a bit overcast, but bloody hell, that's a dry heat out there. Makes you feel rather sticky, doesn't it? Sean Michael Small, good morning, good to see you.
Yes, bloody hell, that's all I'll say about that. I wish I could have experienced the overcast part of the morning, but I don't come out as early as you.
You're like the human version of Grumpy Cat.
That's one way of putting it. Yes. Grumpy Cat would love some nice overcast weather, and I guess at the end of the day, we just have to ride out what's left of the dry season. Hopefully, it's not too dry. The irony, of course, is I don't think it really makes that much difference to the water supply that people are actually experiencing, regardless of what's going on with WASA. But some interesting news came in yesterday, as well as there's a couple of ironic topics that we have to get into throughout the day. So, of course, let's start things off with the Daily Review. I'm going to lead off with, one could say maybe the smaller of the first set of stories that we have for the day. And that is, of course, the opposition leaders calling for Venezuelan migrants to be regularized. I'm not entirely sure exactly why now is this call coming now. I do know that serious thinkers like Professor Roger Hussain has looked into the situation or has an opinion that Venezuelan migrants could be a benefit to TNT's economy and society. I just think that, look, it's nice, we could talk about it theoretically, but something like this, it should be relatively simple to just get some data. What happens if we do it? What happens if we don't do it? The pros and cons, and then we could just move forward from there, as opposed to, well, you just get these arguments in TNT where it's like, well, just do it. Because?
Well, I think the reason why the opposition leader is raising this issue now, there are two reasons. One, the shadow minister of national security, Saddam Hussein, member of parliament, raised a couple months ago the fact that it's going to be very difficult now to return Venezuelan migrants to Venezuela, because this was initially supposed to be a temporary measure. It seems that though on the face of it, it is still a temporary measure, it's become a permanent fixture. The other comments stem from the Minister of National Security comments regarding Venezuelan migrants. Of course, I would not get too much into that. But I do understand why the opposition leader has raised the issue, and I can also accept her arguments. For example, Venezuelan migrants do contribute to a certain area to our economy. Mm-hmm. They do live here, they do have to pay rent, they do have to pay bills, they even have to purchase items. So it's not to say that they're not directly contributing. I think the issue is because they've filled many vacancies. I've always made an argument those are vacancies that Trinbagonians who are looking for a job could actually work and take such vacancies, but I guess we're very picky and choosy down here. Mm-hmm. Venezuelan migrants have filled those positions, but they do not contribute to the NIS system, and they also do not, which in a way is also not necessarily helping, because when you have positions that are actually being filled but no contributions to the NIS system, of course sources of funds to the NIS system are further depleted. They also do not pay any taxes because they're not citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and they're not registered. And I don't know if they're even given minimum wage. That's an entirely different story. But I do understand the argument in that sense. The argument for allowing them to register for driver's licenses, I'm very confused. Because legally, Venezuelan migrants are, they wouldn't be able to drive. They don't have driver's licenses. But I have seen many Venezuelan migrants operating vehicles. I've seen cars full of Venezuelan migrants driving on the highway, driving on the main road, and I was a bit confused. Is it that because they have I know, for example, if I have a Trinidad and Tobago driver's license, I can drive in the UK for a certain number of months. It's also, I'm allowed to rent a vehicle around the Caribbean if I have a driver's license. But what are the laws in Trinidad and Tobago with regard to that? So that is where my concerns lie, because I have already seen Venezuelan migrants driving on the main roads, on the highways, and I'm wondering if they are doing so according to the law.
So apparently there's a 90-day limit, which makes sense if you're a short-term visitor. For long-term migrants, one, not every Venezuelan is a recent migrant. Some of them might be long-term residents who might have, already sorted out their status previously. And then, of course, this is Trinidad and Tobago. There are Trinidadians who are on the road without a valid driver's license. So I won't put it past that there will be some Venezuelans. Could be 1, could be 2, could be 100. I don't know what the figure is.
That's quite a good point.
Law of averages says there's probably at least 1. But I think, yes, I understand with the NIS argument. The flip side is, if they don't contribute into NIS, we don't have to count them as people that NIS has to support. Once they contribute, then technically they're entitled to NIS support and all of those other services. But if you legalize them with taxes and so forth, and they're part of the system, in some ways it potentially could make it less desirable. If I am a Venezuelan migrant and I have a decent salary, I've been lucky, I'm not being taken advantage of, and I'm earning a salary and I don't have to pay taxes, and it's within the tax bracket where you would have to pay taxes. Now all of a sudden that is going to cost me a little bit of extra, that cost benefit analysis might help. At the end of the day with migration, it might sound harsh, but look, you just need certain natural reasons to prevent a deluge of people from coming in. So if it will restrict migration without causing any undue discrimination, then that actually might be a benefit, not just in the contribution to taxes, but in a way of weeding out those in borderline cases.
I don't see an issue with any migrants coming to Trinidad and Tobago as long as we adhere to the laws. And I think it's a very good point that you've raised, that even Trinbagonians do not necessarily adhere to the laws.
Exactly.
So law enforcement is obviously key. And speaking of law enforcement, for national security reasons as well, there is an argument to be made as to why Venezuelan migrants should be registered.
Yes.
In the sense that, yes, they do have to go, they do get a temporary ID card, but in terms of national security records, I'm not even sure how adequate it is or how efficient or effective the system is with Trinbagonian citizens. But for purposes of the ASP, even yesterday suggesting that there are Venezuelans who are becoming more and more involved in criminal activity, how are our record keepings in regard to that?
I want to move on quickly before we run out of time, but I just wanted, one of the points that the opposition leader made, to have the health workers learn Spanish. I think in the short run, I don't think that's going to fly. That's a long-term thing that we could work towards. But to get maybe basic phrases or some kind of training, but to say that...
But it's also beneficial for anybody to learn a second language. I put it this way. In this particular instance, we can make the argument specific to the regularization of Venezuelans. I understand that. But generally speaking, learning a second language is always beneficial.
All right, so moving on, there's something I noticed that was somewhat ironic, although I can empathize with those who are feeling this way, and that is to say the officers in the Professional Standards Bureau that were involved in the case, apparently, the entire group of officers in that bureau are taken aback by the response of the public and the criticisms over the Brent Thomas affair. And it has caused the officers involved, I believe they've had to go to counseling, and it has caused the entire Professional Standards Bureau to have a drop in morale. And I think the Welfare Association president, he pointed out the fact that, look, the politicians in Barbados kind of blunted the blow and with regards to the conduct of their officers, speaking about their officers' conduct. But he is complaining that our local TTPS officers are being used like a political football. And I will agree up to the point where it does seem as though the government is trying its best. They're not outright saying, literally, we were not involved, we had no idea. But they're saying enough to imply, well, look, the police went and did their own thing. You know, as unlikely as it seems that they're going to do a foreign operation as a police service that doesn't have the authority to do so without the say-so from a higher-ups, which is something that we've said more than once on about this topic. And what do you think about that?
There's a statement that you often use. The irony, or the ironic thing is, that the name of this branch is Professional Standards Bureau. Right? Listen, police officers are human beings as well. Let us not forget that. But what nonsense is this?
I mean, again,
Listen, you have to understand.
I just feel as though politically they are being, to some extent, being thrown under the bus. I wouldn't say that it's all their fault.
You see,
I do have a but you go ahead.
I would agree that they are being thrown under the bus. It seems that way. Police officers are feeling very traumatized by public pressures and are now seeking counseling. I mean, when police officers, by the way, are rather erratic in their behavior towards citizens, you don't see the Police Service and Welfare Association coming and offering counseling to those citizens. But let me just put that aside for a moment.
Death of PC kills.
Remember, just remember they are human beings as well.
Yes.
The reason why I'm saying this is nonsense is because they're not, I don't think they're feeling traumatized by the public backlash, you know. I think it's guilt. I think it's guilt because, according to a judgment, an illegal act was committed. Now, it is before the courts in terms of an appeal, but the judgment said that it was unlawful. So the police officers are feeling guilty, and possibly, if they were to actually come out and tell us the truth and reveal precisely what happened, we all know they can't for the sake of probably their job and by extension life, then maybe their conscience would ease a little bit and they wouldn't have to seek this counseling. But I would agree, yes, okay, maybe they're being used as political footballs. But even if you as an officer, you would have had to have an understanding, this is wrong. I cannot do that. Protest against it. Do not allow this to happen. Because you see, police officers cannot be so ignorant to think that these things will be hidden from the public and that they would be immune. What? The politicians have now laid the majority of the blame on the actions of the Trans-Tobago Police Service. And quite honestly, I think anybody would feel traumatized because of guilt.
Here's the thing though, I actually do think, oh gosh, you just said something there. They assumed they would get away with it. No. I think they actually might have thought that they were doing the right thing, which of course makes the Professional Standards Bureau name of the unit even more ironic. Right, exactly. Because, and I could see it where, because maybe they got approval. I mean, at least twice on this show, that is to say, 2 separate dates, we've questioned how is it that police officers are going to just go to Barbados to execute a warrant without some sort of authorization, right? So, assuming that there was official approval, you have approval, you're not studying, is this right or wrong? You don't know better. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of situations with regards to the TTPS where not every police officer is that well versed on either the law or regulations and proper operating procedures.
Here's something interesting of which I learned last week in conversation with an individual whom is very versed with the law. That individual last week told me that a police officer, when they are leaving Trinidad, even to go to Tobago, they're a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. But as a police officer, even if you're leaving Trinidad to go to Tobago, whether it be for vacation, you have to have it in writing and it's sent to your seniors for approval. So that's on record. They essentially have to approve of it. So even if it's for vacation, so going to Barbados, it is clear to me that these police officers would have had to have the permission as well as the go-ahead to go. But in terms of even landing the plane, taking the individual, using this RSS, that approval will come from the Minister of National Security. So the mere fact that these individuals could tell us that they're not aware of the situation or they were not involved in it, and the Minister of National Security received an oral report, up to now I can't understand how that has any standing or footing. The point is, these officers have a guilty conscience, and honestly, if they're feeling traumatized, I think it's by their own hand. I honestly do. I feel sorry for them to the extent that there's public backlash, but it's public backlash because of their ignorance. They should not have done it. If they didn't carry out those instructions, it should have been raised. They should have gone to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social Welfare. Why isn't Gideon Dixon speaking about that? Why isn't he going after that? Why isn't he saying that this is wrong and my officers were directed to do this?
He is falling back on the age-old excuse of, well, I can't speak about it because it's currently in front of the courts and it's an active investigation. And all right, fine. Here's the thing, though, right? They're traumatized by their own hand. I think to some extent, you just might be right because this should be a lesson. And I'm actually surprised this has not come up more often. But at the end of the day, you cannot assume that instructions you have and approval you have makes everything 100% legit, legal, above board, etc., etc., etc. You have to cover yourself. You have to know how to do your job. Just because an elected official is giving you instructions, that doesn't mean that they know how you are supposed to do your job.
Elected or appointed, we're not so sure.
Right, okay. So my point is, especially in public service, but even in private business, once you reach a certain level of responsibility, at the end of the day, you're the one doing it, right? You're a human being with a head on your shoulders. You're supposed to have some kind of judgment. And if you can't exercise judgment, then what are you doing with a rank above, I don't know, police officer, police constable, or whatever?
I wish I can feel sorry for these officers on the basis that, yes, they are human beings, and mentally, emotionally, psychologically, it could be difficult. I truly wish I could express my sympathy towards them. But they should know that this is Trinidad and Tobago, and that they would not have been immune to anything once it was revealed to the public. I'm very pleased that this was revealed to the public. And this is the thing. Earlier, what Chris gave herself an excellent rating. I still can't understand that. But these officers should know this is TNT. At the end of the day, if anything happens, it's their heads. And you know what? They were probably thinking, listen, if I don't do this, it's my life or my job. Again, if the Social Services and Welfare Association could speak about all the trauma and whatnot, they could also highlight how they are being given illegal instructions, how they are being directed this way. But no, in Trinidad, honestly, we are just fools sometimes to our own intelligence.
You want to know who's playing it smart? The minister and the commissioner, because an oral report leaves no paper trail to account.
You've got the Commissioner of Police to appear before GSC, playing it smart. Let's see how really smart she is and how she stands up to that GSC.
Exactly.
To the Minister of National Security, well, he's a smart man.
He's been
a smart man, not in the sense of compliments, by the way.
He's been showing some smarts in some ways, not all, but in some ways.
You're too kind, Sean.
It's crafty.
The irony is you're the one being kind.
It's smart in a way that I don't appreciate. Let's put it that way.
And the irony is we like to continue talking point, but we have to take a break here. We'll be right back after this.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch ultra-slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Chaguanas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, our Attorney General, our current Attorney General, Reginald Amo, well, he will forever be first known as Attorney General for trying to convince a Miami court that he was only a junior attorney when he was sitting in a defense of this current case. And
let it go, man. This
case, of course, is one of our PRCO civil matters that recently was concluded yesterday because of AG Amore's faux pas, so to speak. It allowed the former Attorney General Minister of Legal Affairs, Farah Sawari, to keep up with this case and bring it home. And of course, now I guess you could say the proverbial victory lap was thus taken by the now current Minister of Local Government, Farah Sawari. For more, time to cue this.
The people of Trinidad and Tobago can therefore now know with certainty the following in terms of summary. Number one, after 19 years of litigation in the civil arena in the United States of America, there has been final judgment, some $131.3 million United States dollars, equivalent to nearly 1 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Interest accrues at $9 million per annum on that. Steps are now being taken to enforce the judgment. The enforcement of the judgment will be pursued by asking for particulars of assets, etc. The judgment is joint and several in liability, meaning you can pursue one person or all for the entire judgment sum. There is a right of appeal, not yet invoked. That right of appeal stands separate from enforcement proceedings. If you wish to stop enforcement proceedings as a defendant in the United States, you must place a bond for the entire sum of the judgment plus 2 years' interest. In steps apart from that, the state is entitled to millions of dollars in legal fees, which the state is pursuing aggressively with its attorneys. It is important to note that in the judgment that was delivered today, the final judgment, we gave a credit. It's a set-off that was applied today. So in arriving at the $131.3 million, we deducted, before getting to that sum, the sum of some $4.6 million. That sum represents monies which were received by Trinidad and Tobago. And I wish to state that some of that money was received in the course of the UNC government's tenure. So I must admit that I was quite surprised to learn that there was some allegation of political persecution in this matter by the leader of the opposition, if I recall correctly, subject to correction. I want to remind that several $1 million, United States dollars, were received by the UNC administration government, and therefore they would be well aware of the propriety of the lawsuit which was commenced. The time frame for appeal is set out between 30 to 45 days from today's date. The recovery of the judgment stands separate from the appeal. The state is entitled to pursue the recovery of the judgment while an appeal is going on, unless it is stopped from doing that. We are on the track where we are pursuing the recovery of the judgment as of today. So, to answer your question, it will involve the following parameters: having the questionnaires filled out, the declaration of what assets each of the 3 defendants have, the tracing of those assets, and then pursuing the recovery of those monies from them. That will continue to go day by day from today's date onward. And that will certainly involve the defendants giving detailed particulars of their assets. And those assets are worldwide assets. So that will be a process which has to be completed in a very tight time frame, and that step will be taken now. Obviously, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago hasn't been sitting on its hands for 19 years and would have a fairly good idea of certain other things that it ought to be aware of.
That's the Attorney General yesterday at the press conference.
Former Attorney General.
Former Attorney General. Well, you can't tell with the musical chairs of responsibilities at times. You know, Minister of National Security, Minister of Energy, speaking about the RSS plane. But at the end of the day, I think, look, it to some extent validates the merits of the case. They also have criminal convictions in the United States courts. But at this point, I don't really think that was in question. What really is in question is how much money would the country really and truly, receive. I understand they're going after the assets of the gentleman if necessary, but do they even have enough assets to cover such a bill?
How much money would TNT get? Well,
we have...
In the words of Dr. Evil, $1 billion. Anyway, all jokes aside, I think this is good news. I've always suggested that if there was any allegations of criminal wrongdoing, go through the legal process. Mm-hmm. It's taken almost 20 years, but a judgment was actually made in favor, an appeal made in favor, actually, for the plaintiff, which is Tobago, for the tune of close to $1 billion TT dollars. And the interest will accrue at over $9 million US per annum, commencing from, I think, yesterday. Now, this could still be appealed within the next 30 days. Appeal could be lodged. But at this time, I think it's good news. I will celebrate it simply because justice has been served. I don't care what your political colors or ilk is. It doesn't matter to me. If there are allegations of wrongdoing, an investigation takes place, it goes to the courts find you guilty, it even goes to the appeal find you guilty. The next step, of course, is the recovery of the assets, as you've mentioned. How long that's going to take. But furthermore, just a little side note. Whilst it is still something to feel good about that justice has been served, I'm curious, I'm just very, very curious that because it's taken so long, I wonder, of this $1 billion, how much would account for legal fees over the last 20 years?
Right, so without legal fees, it's actually, I believe, around 900 million, right? So I don't know exactly, you know, what the legal fee figures. I can't remember if the Minister of Local Government said it or not in the press conference, and I haven't found the figure in the reports. But I did do the math trying to like figure out, well, is it really $1 billion? It comes up a little bit short, depending on, I think even if you multiply it by 7 to 1, if you use 7 TT dollars to 1 US as your exchange rate. But the other thing about this to me, because you said it was what, 20 years, 50, I can't remember but
yeah.
At the end of the day, one could argue, one could make the case that a good 5 to 7 years was lost because of politics, because of the previous administration. Now, is this a situation, because it seems as though the opposition leader was doubling down, saying this is political persecution, right? Trying to defend the stance of, well, the minister made a case in the press conference that, you know, nothing was done during their time, and it took until 2017 to actually get the case back started again. Is this something of a mark against the opposition party?
Well, what do you mean?
Because they would have essentially sat on $1 billion judgment, or for all intents and purposes. They did not pursue this for their time there, and the case had to be restarted to some degree when the current administration came in. Now, I mean, let's not go into whose party is whose. It's just on the surface of it, right? So maybe there's an angle, but on the surface of it, to me, it seems as though, well, politics, one side wanted to not really pursue the matter, but this matter, we're talking big money here, that also technically included criminal convictions in the states previously.
Politics are always going to have a role to play in any litigation in which the state is involved. Like, for example, the judgment of the fake oil scandal.
Right, yeah.
So that is one. And there's also this judgment, his name slips my mind now, the gas to liquid plant at Petrotrin. Politics played a role in that as well. But would I say it's a stain on the opposition? I don't think it's a huge stain on the opposition, simply because there's so many other stains. You know, it kind of covers up this one.
I mean, AV drilling was, what, less than 100 million? This is $1 billion.
No, I know. If you look at it at the magnitude, but it's also been acquired over time. It's been 20 years. But overall, the opposition's defense of political persecution, no. I mean, I didn't expect anything else from the opposition. But let's be honest with you. There is always some level of motivation involved politically. There is always some level. But again, my entire argument is if there is allegations of wrongdoing and an investigation takes place and it's taken to court, you found guilty, excellent. My concern now is, because there is an understanding of political influence, what would it take to actually enact more investigations into allegations of wrongdoing? And I hope we learn something from this case. It's unfortunate it's taken 20 years, but...
The irony is, there's conflict of interest both ways. There is the conflict of interest to not prosecute, and then there's the conflict of interest to pursue the matter. So this is one of those things where it kind of breaks the principles of which we were debating with other conflicts of interest that governments of the land have faced, like with the appointment of Silk and etc. It's a case where, look, at the end of the day, we're not going to fault the government for pursuing this matter, even though they obviously, as you pointed out, had a political motivation. It doesn't necessarily mean that the decision was wrong or unethical. I will just say this to close it out, though. ideally, this case would be something of a warning. Hey, if you're thinking about, corruption, careful, you might end up having to pay treble the damages.
I don't think so.
Right, that's the thing. If you do it like this and get caught like this.
Remember, the entire thing is, one, what is it going to take to enact an investigation? Two, is going to take some time.
Well, not
These
just that.
cases take time.
Just the fact that there are accusations against the current administration, they don't have to be proven. But the fact that they exist, I think, undermines any sort of messaging that this result from this case could have provided.
I would prefer that
us.
when accusations are raised, they're raised with some form or some level of evidence. You see, that helps the situation.
Yes.
That also helps the public contextualize it and to also understand, listen, this is very important and we actually need to deal with the situation.
Unfortunately, that is politics on a whole, around the world, but
politics
in TNT, of course, we see it. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, I want to examine the current crime plan that's being enacted in Tobago. And it caused me to raise some greater questions with regards to how we deal with crime in general, not just in Tobago in particular, but this is Tuesday. We'll speak about Tobago here on Talking Point when we come back after the break.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy Shares. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
We have seen the infiltration of gangs operating on this island with their support from their counterparts in Trinidad. And therefore, this is a dangerous road for national security. It is with this in mind that we are asking our public, our citizens residing here in Tobago, to please be aware. It is nothing strange that we are seeing parents are allowing firearms and ammunitions together with drugs in their homes and sitting comfortably by and allowing such to take place because they themselves are beneficiary of financial rewards. Knowing fully well that their children are not working anywhere to urge these large sum of incomes. I have instituted 2 teams of officers led by 2 inspectors of police who have been given the mandate, together with the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, to rid all corners of Tobago of gangs and drug blocks. Life will not be easy. As I ask members of the citizens, law-abiding, to bear with us as we search all vehicles and homes that are causing this disruption. I am asking you to partner with us in this fight against crime. We cannot do it alone. That I am prepared to accept your call at 745-4957 for any information of illegal crime or illegal activities, that I am prepared to ensure that your information is confidential and will work towards ridding the miscreants in this society of Tobago.
Our efforts in supporting the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will focus on 4 lines of effort, which includes joint patrolling, targeted operations, increased planning and support for strategy and concept development, as well as community development initiatives so that we build greater resiliency in the communities. Crime and gang proliferation is a community-based phenomenon, and the improvement in the community is not only affected by the hard policing efforts, but also those softer efforts that see building resiliency and allows the community to develop as a unit.
The known gangs I speak of that exist in Trinidad, there are arms of them here in Tobago. Within the 36 communities of Tobago, within every street corner there are drug blocks, which the Tobagonians are aware, the police is aware of them as well, and therefore these are what we speak of, that it is our intention to rid them of their operation.
That's ACP Collis Hazel and Major Michael Adams of the TTDF giving their presentation with regards to their crime plan last week alongside the Chief Secretary, who also informed the public of certain measures that the THA were doing, which seemed, it was nice to hear some practical measures that they were trying to institute, trying to find resources to help the TTPS deal with certain things. More police officers, about approximately 30, should also be going to Tobago to help. But out of that press conference, though, it got me thinking that...
That's good.
Yes, I know. Sometimes, folks, every now and then, I might decide to have a thought. And my thing is, though, I know that we've heard this before. Get the TTDF involved, get the Defense Force, the Army involved to help out the police. And it was only now, And it's ironic that I thought of this now, and I'll say why just after. It's only now that I realize, wait, how is it that the Defense Force is going to help the situation? The things that we complain about from the police, exactly what about the Defense Force is going to cover or going to assist in areas such as the conviction rate with murders, even potentially the detection rate, getting enough evidence to actually convict gang members, not just know who they are, but actually lock them up. What function of an army is going to allow improvements of these areas? Now, that thought is ironic because in the press conference, the gentleman who had a bit more holistic of an approach with regards to what he was saying, actually I think was the major as opposed to the ACP. So it's ironic, but at the end of the day, the TTPS is the service that does the law enforcement functions and the Army does not. And we don't necessarily need more guys with guns. The TTPS has shown that they can handle violent encounters if criminals want to shoot at them. It's the investigations and the evidence gathering and showing up to court so that the prosecution can move forward. These are the things that the Defense Force is not going to help with. So
why not?
Well, to some extent, they might not legally be allowed to.
Let me ask you a question. And this is just from a
plain Defense Force prosecutors.
Just from a plain layman's view. Citizens can carry out an arrest.
Yes. So, yes, by extension, yes, the Defense Force can.
But the thing is, from my understanding, is that the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force has the power to hold an individual, and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, if they are not with the Defense Force at such time, though it's going to be joint patrols. Mm-hmm. So it's more for a manpower movement and more of having more feet on the ground and even more guns on the ground. What will happen is that it's the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that will actually be the ones to formally arrest an individual, carry out the investigation, and show up to court. Though it may require a Defense Force officer to show up to court, because if he's the one that's holding the suspect, that's a separate incident.
Well, at that stage, I don't think he's the one technically, the arresting officer or the one that has custody. Mm-hmm. At that stage.
Remember
he might still be a witness.
The Defense Force officer, if I'm not mistaken, can carry out an arrest. It's the police who has to do everything afterwards.
Yes.
But then again, on what grounds are you carrying out the arrest? And that might be why he has to show up to court. But I don't necessarily see anything wrong with this. I think it's good, the mere fact that we're able to have more feet on the ground, more men on the ground. And if the Defense Force could actually assist, I think it's good. I'm not against it.
You see, the thing is, when it comes to, roadblocks, having more feet on the ground to help ensure certain exercises and the operational planning, I think, would be in part to do that. When they want to try to have a sort of a dragnet or patrols, perhaps in forested areas, there's a whole host of areas that the Defense Force could help with. But generally speaking, the basic complaints is about the effective police work that we're not seeing, particularly around murder investigations, right? With a 13% detection rate. And there's only so much that soldiers could do to help with that. They do not have the training, nor do they have the mandate, the authority, the responsibility to do certain police functions.
I think we also may be undermining the fact that there is a possibility of, which we do not know in this particular instance, but I know over the COVID-19 pandemic, officers of the Defense Force were going to receive basic police training because they were going to help with the state of emergency.
Well, for that, I have no issue with that.
So in this particular instance, I'm not aware of that taking place, but it is a possibility.
I don't know if that is legal.
But you have to understand, this is not my biggest beef with this press conference. I'm sticking to my point where I think it's good. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard any attorneys or anybody raising an issue about this or against this. The next side of it is when ACP Collis Hazel has suggested that there are arms of Trinidadian gangs that they are aware of, that are the ones that are committing these crimes in Tobago. Mm-hmm. Again, I keep stressing, if you have information or intelligence that suggests that, how many individuals have you arrested in connection with these incidents? Simply because, again, it is illegal to be affiliated with a gang. It is illegal to be a member of a gang. If you're making such statements, clearly you have evidence clearly you have intelligence.
Well, one, they don't necessarily have evidence, otherwise why is there no convictions?
Well,
but
then,
intelligence...
if they have no evidence, then don't make that comment.
Well, here's the thing. One of the Defense Force officers that was there, I'm not sure if it was one of the senior ones or one of the junior ones, was an intelligence officer. So I do wonder if a lot of the intelligence that we get is utilizing national security assets, which is fine in a defense scenario, but will not necessarily be approved. Not to saying that the gathering of it is illegal, but it just will not meet scrutiny for a court, which is why we have that issue. So we have military assets that give us the intelligence we need, but for whatever reason, it's not enough to get convictions. And this could be, again, where the Defense Force is actually helping. Do we not have a police intelligence unit? I'm not entirely sure.
We do. We do. We can we can debate on their abilities and their effectiveness at different point. But let's flip it around for a moment. If this proves to be successful, we certainly hope it does, would your argument still be the same?
I find it very unlikely, because it depends on what you mean by success. I don't think it's going to have a lot of long-term success, maybe isolated in Tobago because of the unique circumstances. As the ACP said, this is new to Tobago, so you could perhaps take measures to kind of keep it from getting entrenched. And I get that, but it seems as though, just, listening to what they said, there will be a lot of exercises, a lot of searches of cars, potentially warrants to execute searches on homes, a lot of roadblocks, right? Of which, of course, the extra manpower would be very beneficial to do all of these various things. But I'm not too sure in the long run if that's going to really solve the issues that we have, generally speaking, in the national crime problem.
Well, we're speaking specifically of Tobago, because as I mentioned, if this particular exercise is successful, would your argument still remain?
To some extent, yes, because it's not, I don't think we could duplicate the success. If it is successful in the way I think it could be, I don't think it could be duplicated in Trinidad. Right? Well, I think that at best, the same methods in Trinidad would be a plaster, similar to how a state of emergency would be a plaster.
The only way that on a national level it could be successful is if you get to the source of the crime. Because we can say all these things about, we know who's committing it, we know who's doing it.
And more soldiers are not going to help you convict crime bosses, right? You need better investigative practices and a whole host of other things with regards to that.
More soldiers give you a manpower if the investigation proves to be fruitful. More soldiers can give you more manpower.
I think it's not that so much that we have a crime problem. Crime is the symptom, it's the major symptom, right? Just like how, all of the symptoms of COVID, but you have the virus. Those are also the disease. There's a distinction there. The real issue is our criminal justice system and the deficiencies within it. And again, I believe the Defense Force participation, they could help with certain things directly, but in other things, they could just cover up deficiencies. They can't make up for all of the problems.
We have to break with news, but in response to your point, I actually look at it from a different perspective. I think crime is the issue, but there are multiple factors that are fueling the level of criminal activity, such as an inefficient and ineffective criminal justice system. So let's take a break here, and when we return, we'll open up the phone line. Phone line, TSTT, you heard me, phone line. This morning.
You're antagonizing them again, and you need them to fix it.
Clearly, they can't fix it. We'll be right back after this.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Close to $1 billion awarded in Piarco Airport matter. Teaching Service Commission clears the air. Regionally, British resident in a $58 million cocaine smuggling bust in Jamaica. And internationally, 6 dead in New Zealand hostel fire. Now for the details. Close to $1 billion have been awarded in the Piarco airport matter. Former Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi says steps are now being taken to enforce the judgment.
19 years of litigation in the civil arena in the United States of America. There has been final judgment, some $131.3 million United States dollars, equivalent to nearly 1 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Interest accrues at $9 million US dollars per annum on that. Steps are now being taken to enforce the judgment. The enforcement of the judgment will be pursued by asking for particulars of assets, etc.
The Teaching Service Commission notes the concerns of stakeholders with regard to the filling of vacant offices at several of the denominational primary schools in time for the new academic year, September 2023. The Commission is assuring the public that there will be no disruption of these schools. The Commission embarked on an online platform in January 2023 for the receipt of applications. Over 2,000 online applications were received by the Commission from persons of all faiths, denominational bodies. These applications were sent to the Ministry of Education and the respective denominational boards, and all eligible applicants will be given an opportunity to be interviewed by the Ministry of Education. In regional news now, a retired nurse is among 3 British residents who will face the courts on May 17th over the alleged attempt to smuggle $58 million worth of cocaine on a flight to the United Kingdom from the Sangster International Airport, Jamaica. The incidents happened on May 6th. All 3 men were charged on May 10th after they were interviewed in the presence of their attorneys. They are scheduled to appear before the St. James Parish Court, Jamaica, on Wednesday. In international news now, at least 6 people have died and others remain unaccounted for following a fire in a hostel. Emergency services were called to the 4-story building in Wellington, New Zealand, just after midnight to report the building was alight. Dozens were rescued from the building, but police said a number of people remain unaccounted for. Well, that was your news of the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that break didn't feel like much of a break.
Well, I mean, we used to have folks long news breaks. We're talking twice as long, but we've got more efficient now.
That was because of the one they call RGB, Ryan Gomez Burke?
Actually, no. In this case, I'm not. It's not anything that was his fault. I will at least give him that, or at least not mostly his fault.
RGB, you heard this man is defending.
Yes. Anyway, let's not get too far down into this. The joke the audience won't be able to follow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what, since we can't follow that particular joke, why don't you call in this morning and share with us your thoughts and opinions? Well, there's a lot to speak about actually, but the topics we focus on this morning is this $1 billion judgment in favor of the plaintiff, that is Trinidad and Tobago. We also spoke about the moral within the professional bureau. Well, that particular...
The morale, not the morals.
The morale. It's both. It's both. Okay?
That's true.
I deliberately said it.
That is true.
It is both.
You sure you didn't know which one you wanted to say, so you didn't commit to either?
It is both. Right? Anyway, as I was saying, they're traumatized because of the backlash from the public. And then we spoke about Tobago and what's taking place there with joint patrol efforts by the Trans-Tobago Defence Force and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. It's something, came across in my head, and it's just that statement about Trinidad gangs infiltrating Tobago. And that may be true. However, again, in making such statements, you're going to have some evidence to say that. What have we made in terms of arrest?
No, but I can understand you could make statements like that without necessarily arrest. I understand that. I could see where they would be able to track the same suspects, so it's a reasonable case to make, not necessarily enough to convict, right? So I could get that. I think it was interesting that the ACP, he said something that was similar to what ASP Ashraf Ali said yesterday with regards to families having to be careful about what their children, other family members, people around them are getting involved in, and giving that unspoken approval, turning the blind eye. It's fairly obvious that they're not working, they don't have a job, but somehow money is rolling in, and you know what? You're content to let it happen. To some extent, I would argue that is a progression of the work habits with regards to those in the country who like to get a government job where they don't have to do much work. Well, a criminal job where you don't have to do much work and get an even larger pay is technically the logical next step.
What are your thoughts on these 30 officers going across to Tobago to assist?
Well, the irony, here's the thing.
You really love that word.
I love that word. I actually do wonder to what extent, because they haven't had a long-standing issue with gangs in Tobago, and I don't know how true that is, right, to say, because I know that criminals used to go to Tobago to hide, but they weren't necessarily operating like how they operated in Trinidad. Now, one might, stop me if you've heard this before, police have a roadblock, they're looking for a man, and he basically gets driven past the roadblock in a police car. Right? I think I've brought it up at least once on the show. You haven't heard that before?
It doesn't ring a bell.
The police are looking to arrest somebody, but he's driven out of the cordon, right? He's driven past the roadblock in a police car, right? And it more or less undermines the whole exercise. Now, my hope is that the police in Tobago, generally speaking, will not, they're less likely to have those connections, right, to have that corruption. And then you're sending 30, and hopefully, you don't send up anybody that might have some sort of tie to a criminal gang.
Given the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago currently, where there seems to be some level of, I guess there's a separation to some degree. Would it be acceptable for Trinidadian officers heading across Tobago to be a part of these exercises? Do you think that the public in Tobago will actually be accepting of it?
They have to be. Like, at the end of the day...
Oh, they have to be, but they could also kick a fuss.
What's more important, right? that whole rivalry of the islands and kind of us against them. Now, to some extent, the ACP, I'm sure there will be officers who are not all from Tobago. I'm sure there are officers in TNT who are from Tobago and officers in Tobago who are from Trinidad, right? I'm not entirely sure if the ACP where his
the ACP is actually from Tobago.
Right, okay.
He was born, he grew up in East Tobago. And he actually is in Tobago.
Right, so that's why I stopped myself
From what I understand, I think he's managing the affairs of the Eastern
Division and Tobago. That's why I wasn't, I didn't want to assume. But even if it was just the Tobago Division, it's not automatic that he is a Tobagonian. Now, my only thing though is, just as how the gangs could bring crime, you could bring, it doesn't have to be all. It could be just one, similar to what the ASP said about Venezuelan crime. It doesn't have to be, 99.999% of the migrants could be law-abiding citizens. You just need a handful to bring that level, that higher level of crime, of violence. And that's essentially what's happening on a smaller scale to Tobago. We get it from Venezuela, and then our gangsters now, they're moving to Tobago to migrate, to find new prospects for ill-gotten gain. And you just need one bad apple to kind of spoil that whole thing. And hopefully it doesn't happen. The irony is, though, with Tobago officers, again, I said that word, just as how the ACP did warn against the citizens, he said, look, he was concerned that it seemed as though some citizens were encouraging the crime. They were happy for the extra easy money. You also have to be concerned that now your officers are going to be tempted potentially on a level that they weren't tempted before. Some temptations is monetary. Some temptation is technically not temptation. It's via threats and coercion and strong-arming the officers to get dirty. And then once you're dirty, now it's harder for you to say no. So there's a whole host of things that we don't know. But the TTPS in Tobago is probably going to be challenged in a way that they have never been challenged before. So I could understand the want to try to get ahead of this as soon as possible and to not let it develop into anything further.
Well, 623-9376, call us in and join us on Talking Point. Actually, wonderful news, yes. Guess what? The phone isn't working as we speak.
No. It's simple. I got it. The government has decided that they want to hear more of what we have to say, so they've asked TSCT to take the phone lines down, so that we could talk more. It's obviously what's going on, ladies and gentlemen.
Should we do like how the ACP in Tobago called out his cell number? Should we call out our cell numbers as well?
No, because we still can't broadcast it. Otherwise, I actually might crazily enough. I just might. But no, there will be no actual.
I cannot understand for the life of me what is taking place with TSTT. It's not that I'm diverging topics now deliberately because I vent about it all the time on Talking Point. But this is ridiculous because you had a situation with copper thefts. We now move across to fiber, and I think TSTT is the last of the networks to actually start transitioning to fiber.
And therein lies part of the problem.
Which tells you how archaic they are anyway. So whatever the level of infrastructure that they have, we're only now moving into the 21st century. That is ridiculous.
I don't even know if I could take this.
No, no, it's fine.
Hello, you're on the air.
Good morning. I was checking to see if Sean's phone would work on air.
It's just not a lot of callers could get this number. So
are we allowed to do this?
I don't know. But listen, when you're backed into a corner, you have to innovate, adapt. So for those who don't know, this is Miss Santa Cruz on the line, brought to you by Sean's phone. The lady with the good news. I don't know if they could hear you.
All right, Miss Santa Cruz, you can actually call us in at 623-9376 because I believe the phone lines somehow or the other miraculously are working now. We do have a call on the line with us, so have a good day.
Thank you, Miss Santa Cruz. Okay, I have to go now. Bye-bye.
We have a caller on the line with us from San Juan. Good morning, caller.
Very good morning to you, Keaton.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sean Michael.
Can we get some volume, guys? Sorry about that caller.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just for the records, concerning the crime in Tobago, when I think she's now in charge of the public relations department of the Trinidad and the Tobago Police Force, Joanne Archie. Joanne Archie said just about 2 or 3 years ago, at least when she was in charge of the head of the center across the head of the police division in Tobago, she said most of the crimes were committed by Trinidadians going across to Tobago, and most of the crimes in Tobago were committed by Trinidadians coming across. I don't know how you will treat with that.
Well, it's a similar thing being suggested
and
by...
And also, I don't know if the police always ask the public to help us in the fight of crime, but sometimes what do? If we ask the police for a description of the criminal element, and the police give us a description, they say, well, the man who committed the act, it is a bald-headed rasta. How do you go about looking for that person? Thank you. I listened to your comments already.
Thank you, caller. I think the key question with what the then, was she ACP or DCP, Archie? What the then head of the Tobago division said is, what type of crimes are you counting? Because I also had another observation. I'm not sure if you made this specific one before, but it was jogged by an observation you always make. We don't know what the murder rate is because we only know what's reported. Yeah. Well, one of the easiest things, they say serious crimes are down. Do we know how much smuggling is not detected? We have no idea. And that's one serious crime.
Anyway.
That's one serious crime that I think should be with high numbers. Porous borders and all.
You don't have to be dread to be Rasta. But before TSTT decides to inflict more pain on us, let's take this call from Pissy Valley. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean and Keaton. Real pressure with this phone line, boy.
Boy,
real pressure. Oh my gosh. Pressure. Anyway, let me get straight to the point so the callers can get in because we done late already. Sean, sometimes I think you overthink situations. All the officer was trying to say with the joint patrol between armies and soldiers is to give additional help to the police, not for the soldiers to go to court with the case or intelligent thing. All he's trying to say is to give boots on the ground to help. I'll give you an example. In Covine Road, Diego Martin, some years ago, and in Laventil, the soldiers and Covine Road was horrible at that time. The soldiers and police movement a joint patrol exercise, set up camps and things, and get that area under control in less than a month, where people was free. In Laventil too, they did it. Joint patrols, searching cars, army camps with police, and they get Laventil under control. But after they stop it. So, Sean, sometimes you overthink sometimes. It's not for the soldiers to go to court and things. They just give the case on to run down. They could run down somebody else, run down somebody, and turn it over to the police. So don't overthink it. They just have more boots on the ground, and it does help. Thank you.
Thank you, caller, for your contribution. I'll let my co-host and colleague respond.
It's just that the problem is, for better or worse, we look at the murder rate. Even in Tobago, what has triggered this, one could argue, is the murder rate, right? That's the alarming statistic. I would argue that drug and gun smuggling is also up there, but again, how much of it that we can't detect? So the detection, that's why I brought up those aspects of crime. Yeah, they could help with patrols and stuff, and I actually think they could be a big help with intelligence, and I suspect they already have been, right, ongoing. That's not anything new. But with regards to the detection and the conviction rates, to help deal with the murder rate, because the murder rate has more or less just kept going up. It only kind of slowed down thanks to COVID.
I'll be very honest with you. I think both you gentlemen have made very good points. It's now how best we can utilize the resources that are available to us, as well as these joint patrols, to actually address what both you gentlemen are saying. I think it's good that we have more boots on the ground, but the point about detecting in order as a preventative measure, that is obviously an issue, and hopefully this is a deterrent. Hopefully.
I think it could work in Tobago. There's a chance that this will work in Tobago.
Caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Two things quickly. Yesterday, Sean and I spoke about the people with FULs not having the firearm ballistically tested.
Yes.
This is what a statement that was lodged by the Commissioner of Police in the High Court 2 weeks ago, where I took that information from.
Okay.
So, and she is the one that is saying that over 50% of the people with firearms in the country have not gone and have their firearms ballistically tested. This is from the Commissioner of Police. So I didn't appreciate your comment yesterday, trying to defend the Forensic Science Center. It's not about defending. Secondly, I listened to your discourse about the Tobago issue with the Army. Sean, sometimes you should spend your time looking at solutions. There was a statement made on a press conference, and you sort of pick apart that whole issue rather than looking at solutions or looking at the benefits of the Army. With a joint exercise with the police in Tobago, rather than looking at the demerits of the effort. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your contribution, caller. 623-9376, you can call in and join us on Talking Point. Fortunately, we've got one phone line working with us this morning, and we have probably about 4 or 5 minutes left for phone calls.
My comments about the Forensic Center was not to defend them. It was just more out of practicality. If we have an issue getting active investigations to get tested, I don't know if we have the time and resources to just test. I mean, if guns are being imported at thousands per year, right? So
that is a bit of a different argument or different take that you're making as compared to yesterday, because what you're doing now is that you're contextualizing based off of what the caller has just suggested.
But also, I didn't have time to go into that. That was my thought process. I also don't know if that is best practice. Now, the commissioner said it, so I will give her the benefit of the doubt, but I've never heard of that before.
If the commissioner has suggested it, one would think that she's making an argument for these 50% to come forward and get it done. Because the other side of it is it mandatory? And if it is mandatory and they have not gotten it done, how come are they still in a possession of an FUL?
And why is it that we have 64,000 coming in 2020? I don't know how we could keep up with that. But again, I actually think the issue is, the solution would not be to don't do testing. The solution would be we're importing, in my mind, a large amount of guns. How much of it really is going into law enforcement's hands, despite how it was classified? That's another question that was brought up in talks with someone. But with regards to, I understand, yes, it seems negative, but I think at the end of the day, we need to fix the criminal justice system, and the defense force, by the nature of it, will never be a primary service in the criminal justice system. It will always be an auxiliary.
I think that's, again, a different argument that you're making as it relates to the press conference that we watched this morning.
I did concede that I think it, I mean, even just before the caller said that, I hope it does work in Tobago, and it can.
No, I know that, but I'm seeing it's just a different argument.
I know, but I'm trying to, again, explain the foundation of why I have that argument. I think ultimately, with regards to the criminal justice system, things with regards to the judiciary and the police service, because again, investigations, evidence gathering, you said it yourself with gangs. You know, why do we know the gang members, but it's illegal for them to be in a gang? We know who they are, we can't arrest them. Why? Those are different problems, right? And technically speaking, if the army is going to help solve some of these problems, then they will, for all intents and purposes, turn into a police service, which could have its own pros and cons, right, as well. So I'm not saying that the police are all of the problem. And again, I actually did give kudos to the Major Adams for his approach with what he said. He was taking a much more holistic view. And I think it's a bit unfair to now expect the Defense Force, who is not a police service, to come in there and solve the issue.
Is there a need, or should we consider, using the example of what Mr. Pitty Valley suggested about Covine Road in Digger Martin, if that is a success story, and should this actually be effective in Tobago, is there a need to re-examine the possibility of more joint patrol efforts between the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force and the TTPS in TNT? And I'll tell you what, think about it for a moment. Let's take this final call from us, call from Vicebat. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning, sir.
Gentlemen, I'm a little bit bemused with that doctorate bestowed on our Honorable Prime Minister. As my mind would recollect, that same gentleman, Mr. Frederick, would have been the recipient of our highest national award last year sometime. Is that correct?
I believe so.
So is that my back, I scratch yours? Because, I mean, the truth and the fact is there. Trinidad is in a mess. We're in a total mess. Our healthcare system is in shambles. Public utilities is in shambles. I mean, crime and everything else is out of control. And for this man to come and have the gall, without, I hope he would have done, clearly he wouldn't have done any research with respect to our status in Trinidad and Tobago. So there was a script that was presented to him, and I think if he would have done some investigation, he would have found that script to be totally untrue. I have another point I want to make before we go further, and then you can respond. With respect to the cases against Ferguson and Company, I applaud the government of Trinidad and Tobago for taking the action. Similarly, I want them to, if it is possible, with the Malcolm Jones issue, with the AV drilling issue. So, gentlemen, there's a cloud that shrouds over the integrity of this government. There's no secret about it. From the intervention at the President's house with the police commissioner's report, the PSC report, sorry. I mean, where we are, gentlemen, we are a failed state.
Well, Caller, thank you.
Sorry to tell you, and maybe remind you, and remind Trinidad and Tobago that we're in a failed state.
Well, thank you very much for your contribution, Cole. I mean, I did raise the issue of Malcolm Jones as well as the fake oil scandal, but I hope we can understand respectfully. I agree with you, but I would say it's all governments where there's this lack of integrity. It's not just this government,
this sort of thing.
All governments, because mind you, all this thing that the People's Partnership campaigned on, billions stolen, call the heart, this and that.
Literally.
What transpired then?
The thing is, though, to what extent were they able to have it proven in court? Now, I don't think it was a script, because I do believe that Dr. Frederick, part of the justification for giving the Prime Minister the award was that he was the first Tobagonian Prime Minister, which of course we know is not true. And he got the Order of the Republic of TT in 2020. So, but yes, he did receive it. Now,
maybe depending on how things go, he may be the first Prime Minister of Tobago. but go ahead.
With regards to the question that you asked me just before the last call, I think one area where the callers are right, where the example that Pitty Valley that he gave, there was something with regards to police presence in New York, about having a presence visible, widespread throughout the city. And I think, one could argue maybe it was mainly Manhattan, right? That helps with crime. And in that regard, there isn't necessarily as big of a distinction between the Defense Force and the police service. Yeah, if I ever made an investigation, I need a police officer to do that. But if I need a physical security presence to just make sure that, the streets are safe and secure, one could argue that we could intermix police officers and Defense Force personnel. Obviously, you're not gonna leave half the country with just soldiers. You'll put police in, just to ensure in case anything comes up that you need an officer for. But the coverage that you could get, the extra personnel, and that actually could help, to some extent discourage, suppress, and make it difficult for criminal operations on the street to be carried out.
Call for a FISA ban. I do empathize with you. However, I wouldn't say we're a failed state. If we were a failed state, we wouldn't be here right now. In fact, we'd be more like Haiti. And I don't mean that as disrespectful to the nation of Haiti, but we do recognize what's happening there, and it seems as though the government is powerless. But beyond that, I think we are failing in many areas. We can always acknowledge that. With regards to the president of Howard University and this honorary doctorate given to the Prime Minister, you never know. You never could tell me. You scratch your mind. It is a possibility, and I will not ever deny that possibility. However, if I am not mistaken, and I'm always pleased to be corrected, in order for any doctorate to be bestowed, whether it be honorary or for somebody to actually study for it, it goes through, final approval goes through the university's board of governors.
Yeah.
It's a board. It's not just one man making a decision.
Listen, it might look bad. It might look really bad. The reasons given might seem very ludicrous to us, some of the reasons given.
But when all is said and done, that's all the time that we have. The irony is, Sean Michael Small, I'll conclude for you. I'm Keeson Shaw. This has been Talking Points. Today is a good day to have a good day. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.